Thanks for joining us for the West Tigers podcast, episode number 322. Gary, I'm channeling my inner Eddie and I'm shaking things up. I heard the Matthew Johns-esque start the other week, and that inspired me to mix things up a little bit. So I've done just that, and I'm going to continue with some changes because I'm going to throw straight to you and I'm going to ask you a question. We're going to hold off our one-word submissions. I'm going to ask you about the news that came through. See, I'm mixing it all up. The news that came through late last week, the signing of Turuva from the Panthers. We haven't had a chance to discuss it on the pod. Look, not the biggest body, but plenty of energy, plenty of speed.
Yeah, I think he's a really good signing for the club. It was actually a really big day on Friday. Multiple signings. I'm sure we'll mention the other big one as well at some point. But I think Turuva's a really good signing for the club. Premiership winner. Rookie of the Year last year, beat out Jerome Buller for that award. And I think he's had a really good season as well. I was sitting at that game, we went out to Bathurst a week and a half, last weekend, and I was thinking to myself, why aren't we having a crack at this guy? He's the type of winger we need. He may not be the biggest guy, but he does start their sets off pretty well, and he's a good finisher. And then a couple of days later, out of the blue, which was really nice to see, it leaked pretty much the night before, and then the next day we confirmed we'd signed. So, yeah, very impressed.
There'd been some rumours that we were in the market for him, but sometimes you hear those rumours and you take it all with a grain of salt. But you can certainly say, and it leads into that discussion we can have later on about Shane Richardson signing for 4 years. There's heaps of West Tigers stuff to talk about. But Eddie, speak of the devil, he's here. Hello, Eddie Otto. How you doing?
I'm good, Joel. I'm ready to... I've got a rant again tonight, but you know that, so I'll wait.
You've got a rant, but...
Is it a new one or an old one?
Well, it's a new one for the show, but it's an old one for you, Gary.
What about just we'll have your opinion on Turuva, Eddie? Obviously... Well, maybe not obviously. I mean, Junior Tupu is on the way, is going to be heading to the Dolphins, but there's some talk, potentially, the centres for Turuva and even at fullback option as well. And I know that we're teetering close to your rant, but, your observations of him. We couldn't see him play today. He was stressed and emotional after his decision. But what are your thoughts?
It was good to see Ivan a little bit curt last night, a little bit upset. I think he might have been a bit caught off guard by that, leaving him out of the team. But, yeah, no, good signing. And I think could play any of those positions, wing, centre or fullback. But we need speed in the outside backs. Obviously, he doesn't have a lot of size, but I like the intent he plays. He runs the football hard. Pretty good carry out of his own end for a guy his size. So he'll definitely be in our starting backlines somewhere next year.
And a familiar face for Luai as well, I suppose. That's a good thing too. Luai's going to have a few, by the look of it, a few familiar faces around him, especially in that back line. But, I think it's a good signing. I think it's exciting. And what I also liked about it was that we hadn't been reading about it in the Sydney Morning Herald for 3 weeks and hearing about it on SEN for 3 weeks before it all happened. All fell in a heap, but times have changed. It was a 34-10 loss to the Broncos at Campbelltown. Let's have a look at some one-word submissions from the increasingly busy West Tigers podcast forum. Really astonished by the traffic recently. It's been fantastic. And thank you. If you haven't joined up, make sure you join up. It's completely free. Just go to westtigerspodcast.com.au and click on forum and you'll see us all there. Mike, his one-word submission was bunker. We all know what that refers to. Dirty Reds, his word was 2025, so maybe kind of riding off this year. Lorenzo, officials, Tiger Ton, optionless, i.e. we had nothing in attack in the red zone. Peter A, predictable. Canberra Tiger, outclassed. Snake, Snake's one word, coaching. Matt V Tiger, momentum. The Last Ronin, foundation, i.e. trying to get that foundation right. Enumerator, outclassed, but competing till the end. Tiger 5150, regression, not so optimistic, says going backwards under pressure. Tigersman, schooled, Logan R21, very clever. The one word was West Tigers, which he actually made a one word. He took the space out in between, and referring to the West Tigers' typical performance. I've got a few one words, but I'm going to hand it over to the guys. Gary, one word for the match against the Broncos.
Yeah, for me it was just reality. Um, I think most of us outside of Steve predicted that we'd be at least in the bottom half of the competition this season, if not the bottom quarter. And we came up against what I view as the best side in the competition. And I think the evidence was there. That's exactly where these two teams are. And the gulf between those two teams is probably what you would expect from the potential premiers playing against the side that's struggling to get out of the bottom four. I thought there were some positives despite the scoreline, and I'm sure a lot of other people didn't take away positives, but I did see some positives there. But I think it was just the reality of where both these teams kind of positioned in the NRL at the moment.
Okay, and how about for you, Eddie? One word, please.
I can't argue with all those responses you got. I originally had outclassed Joel, but that was you. So I'll just go with speed and power because they have it and we don't. And we're just, it was so obvious last night that they just have some players that individually can just change a game. And they're actually a frightening side to watch. I agree with Gary. I think if they're fully fit at the end of the year, they'll be the Premiers.
Okay, my first one word is one that I added a little bit later on because I didn't see the game. I wasn't there and I was busy and I was in and out watching the game. I saw bits of it. And so knowing that we were doing the podcast tonight, I had to get up Sunday morning and had to watch the game on KO on replay, knowing that we'd lost and knowing what the score was, which is a sort of really punishing, awful way to start the day. So that's definitely a word. Earlier than that, when I was watching the replay, my one word was two. In other words, the Broncos just too big, too fast, too strong, too talented. And I've got one here, physicality, but that could be my one word pretty much every week. Gee, that's come up an awful lot. But my one word, I want to see if you guys can put it in the context. My one word is lamb, Lamb. Can anybody, Gary or Eddie, have a guess as to why my one word is lamb?
Well, we were made roast lamb by the Broncos or something. I mean, Terry Lamb, that's all I can think of, Joel, for me.
Well, those movies, I'll explain. Those movies where there's a Vietnam vet and there's like a helicopter and they get PTSD? Well,
I'm not a movie watcher, but Gary might be.
I was sitting there this morning eating my breakfast and watching the replay and I was having PTSD because it's like this is 2001 or 2002 all over again. Terry Lamb coached West Tigers, fumbling and bumbling and providing absolutely no attacking opportunities, a little bit of ill discipline, but primarily that inability to convert field position and pressure into points, Gary.
I think you may have just been confused by the jumper we were wearing.
The jumper definitely gave me some
the jumper, though.
PTSD.
I do too.
I didn't. I liked it in concept. I liked it when I saw the photos, but I don't think it carried it over as well. And maybe it's because of some of the memories that I associate with that jersey.
You can see, sorry, Joel, you can see why teams don't play with collars, even though they look outstanding. I love a shirt with the collar on it, but half of them were ripped off halfway through the game.
Yeah. It actually does look a bit weird when they put a collar on. It'd look better, I think, without the white collar if you were going to use it. It's still a relatively modern design, but no, there's just too many. I had in my mind Ahmed Bajouri and Hassan Saylor and Trent Runciman and all these names. I'm thinking, oh, geez, I've seen this show before. I've seen this before, Gary.
I was sitting at the game with my daughter and tried talking to an 11-year-old about why they actually have a collar on a jersey. She's never seen one before. She couldn't understand that at all.
Okay, let's have a look at some business. Api Coruscant, there is an injury concern, a bit of nerve pain, a bit of back damage. Of course, he came off from the field. I would like to start with something that I think is going to be the primary focus of the talk about the game, and that is the thing that I think we really struggle with is offensive or overall offensive speed. So if you I watched Canberra versus Cronulla this afternoon. If you look at the way that Cronulla, they're a very good all-round team. The way that they attack, the amount of speed in everything that they do is so vastly different to the West Tigers. It's something, having watched both games in the same day, you could see, and albeit playing against we played against a more difficult and much better side, but that seems to have been our thing through this year and perhaps the last few years, is that we just look so sluggish. We just look so to lack any punch when we've got the ball. And that so much leads to momentum. It's also the same. It's the reverse of that whole line speed thing. When you've got good line speed, then typically you start to wrestle back that momentum. But in offense, and maybe it was a little more evident, Eddie and I had spoken about maybe the possible advantages of running Bateman at lock, but I don't think that worked, and I think that kind of added to it. We looked pedestrian, Gary. Does that sort of resonate with you, that observation?
Yeah, I do think that. I thought there were times where Bateman playing at lock worked. I thought he did do a decent job of linking to his halves. I don't think he was a big enough running threat during the game for that to really work, though. I thought the best we looked in attack was when we did get those guys running deep on the ball. Naden especially running deep and hard onto the ball, I thought was really good out there. Alamero, I messed up his name, out on the wing, looked really good as well, I thought. Just hitting those balls hard off deep backline plays. But again, my biggest problem is we're still not straightening in those situations. And you have a look, again, we're running out of space by the time those outside backs really got the ball. And for me, it is speed. We don't have enough players that are super, super lightning quick. But I still think we could be running those plays a little bit better by straightening that attack a little bit more, and we're still not doing that. I do like that we are developing a game. If you have a look at our trial against St. George earlier in the year, we weren't running any shape at all. We're now at least running shape, but the problem is we're running it sluggish, as you're saying, and slow, and not straightening it to give those outside backs the room. And until we fix that with either speed or some way of holding up the defensive line and sliding across, then our attack's just going to run out of space as it gets to the edges. And that's the biggest problem for me.
I watched probably our game and 5 other games of this round. And the one thing, Eddie, that stands out to me is that all the winners, they all really won the physical battle. If you don't win the physical battle in the game, you typically don't win the game. And that's something that I've been harping on about this, I know this year, but last year, like our body shape, our size, our impact, our strength doesn't give us that opportunity to regularly win that physical battle.
I think it's been a problem all year, Joel. Doesn't look to me to be a coaching thing. It looks more, like you said, like just the body shape and the athletes we've got are not the modern day speed and power back rowers or backs that you'd want in the NRL. They're all trying. That's the thing. There's plenty of effort there this season in nearly every game. But you mentioned the Sharks, and it's just like that. Like they can spin the ball from one side to the other in 3 seconds, and it just looks effortless. But they've got guys that are quicker. I don't necessarily, maybe a couple of guys that are quicker between the ears. Obviously, Nico Hines helps, but it's just like I was at the game last night, sitting towards halfway, and they were getting deep onto the ball, and some of those backline movements looked good, but Brisbane had them pretty easily covered because of just getting across pass, and then you're running out of room. So I don't know what the answer is in the short term, but in the long term, with recruitment, it's got to be looking to recruit some guys that can add some points, add some strike power, and then same thing with the guys coming through the system, looking for a young winger or centre who's got a bit of, might be raw, but someone who's got some upside.
Well, just on recruitment, Shane Richardson on the ABC Grandstand interview that he did yesterday afternoon, he was asked the question, you've signed Taruva, you've signed Luai, what else is coming? And he said nothing. He said, we're not going to market. He said, we've got to use what we've got, and we've got to use the young players that are coming through. So, I'm sure that will change because opportunities will arise, but I was a little bit off put by that. Gary, you said there were some positives. Benji said he was pretty happy with the first half. He thought we were matching it with them. We've played the grand finalists from last year 2 weeks in a row. Pretty sort of similar, where we kind of matched them in that first half and fell away a little bit in the second half. Is that what you were sort of referencing as a positive? You sort of felt and I know that bunker decision, which was obviously a shocker, but again, there's a lot of shades really of that Penrith game when you think about it. That was a key moment that went against us, and pretty much, I think against the Panthers, they scored pretty quickly after that as well. But it was certainly a key moment in that game on Saturday night at Campbelltown. So some positives. 34-10 loss. I know it can be hard sometimes to find them, but I'm sure there were some.
Yeah. For me, that first half I thought was a fairly good performance. We were 30 seconds and an arguable bunker decision away from going in 10-6. You go in 10-6, you're well in that game. Even going in at 10-0, I thought we're still in with a chance. That last 30 seconds before half-time, where they put the kick out wide, and we were, I'm going to jump back to what the actual question was, but that kick for the winger that Reynolds put in to score that last try before half-time, that was coming for a couple of sets. We were really compressed in the middle, trying to hold them through the middle, and leaving Broncos players with a lot of space out wide. That was coming for a while. But if that doesn't come, going in at 10-0, I'm relatively happy. I thought they were fighting hard. I thought our attack was showing some positive signs. I thought, as I said, I thought Naden was getting onto the ball really well and causing some trouble out wide. But the problem is we're not finishing those plays. We're getting bundled in the touch, or we're missing the last pass, or we're having a decision to go against us. And there's a point Steve made last week on the pod with Eddie that I thought was really telling. When he spoke about their game, saying that we had to play at our best, we had to have all the refereeing decisions go our way. We have to have the Broncos play below par to get a win. Now, I think that's pretty much spot on. With a side that's on the bottom of the table, and with the squad we've got at the moment, the effort is huge. I can't doubt the effort. But to win games, because of the lack of talent we have, we need everything to go right. And small little things that probably don't affect other teams, like Appy's try being disallowed, which you can argue either way, I think those things, we don't have the squad to overcome that at the moment. And that's the biggest issue for me. I think one of the positives is the effort. Those outside backs and those block plays I thought were looking better than they've looked all season. So, and I know Eddie's going to go on around about Buller soon, but I thought his opening 20 minutes was pretty good as well. I thought how he was trying into the back line and creating space for those players down that right edge, I thought was looking really good at the start of the game, but he did go away from that. So there were a few positives I did take out of the game, but overall it was a very disappointing night.
Eddie, when you look at the Broncos versus the Tigers in terms of key positional players and who got the better of who on the night, and again, we know that you've got some comments on Buller, but if you compare the game of Walsh with Buller, if you compare the game of Payne-Haas to Stefano, if you compare the game, especially the kicking game of Reynolds to Caesar, I thought Caesar's kicking game was really poor. And Pat Carrigan at lock compared to Bateman, it was those four players. I think if you swap those four players around, the result probably goes the other way.
100%. 100%, but that's the difference in class. And for our boys, that's the reality of if you want to be best in class in this competition, that's where you got to get to. And, Payne-Haas was coming back first game for 6 weeks. And even though I think he probably only played 40 minutes, but every run he made was impactful. I think he made about 135 metres, but it was 12 runs. There was a try there. Every run he was skittling us. Steph had a really quiet game. And then, Reece Walsh, he does some silly things out there, but he's just greased lightning. Like, he's just an absolute freak. That try he scored on half-time. Like, 90% of fullbacks probably don't score that, but he stepped Buller like he wasn't there. So, and Adam Reynolds, he was just a masterclass. One of the best games of his career, I reckon he played last night, and that was playing, hobbling around the whole game. He's just so good between the ears, reads everything. I didn't like the standing ovation he got at the end, but maybe we'll mention that later.
Stefano, Gary, and I've got to just put it in there because Richardson did say it. He said, because he was asked about Stefano's contract in that interview. And look, this is a bit of a free kick, but he said that some of the clauses, it's the most I can't remember the exact word he used, but the most unbelievable contract he'd ever seen. That those clauses were put in there. I'm sure he sort of shakes his head about some of the things that have been going on. But Stefano definitely targeted 9 runs, 64 metres, 25 post-contact metres. A disappointing night from Stefano, who has been in good form. What I want to ask you, or what I would like to, that observation that I'd like to make is, if you look at Stefano's body shape compared to Payne Haas's body shape, Haas is just built so differently up around the shoulders. Stefano's a big man, and Klemmer is another example of this. Like, if you look at the effectiveness and the strength in the shoulders of Payne Haas compared to Stefano, who would otherwise be quite equivalently sized in height, you can really see where they've got that muscle. But outplayed by Klemmer, most people on the socials are saying, Gary. Certainly Klemmer's stats are a lot better as well.
Yeah, I thought it was a very poor night from Steph. We're talking about contracts a couple of weeks ago. I think it was on the midweek pod, where we were discussing what value he might bring. And I really wanted to raise the point that night was, we're talking about $900 to $1 million contracts for him. And the problem I had with that at the time was you're basing that off like about a month of football. He had a really strong start to the season. The way he was running the ball was different to how he's ran the ball at any time in his career. He was running the ball with impact. He was hitting the line hard, and he's always been able to bump a guy off, but he's often hit that guy and his momentum stops, even though the guy falls off the tackle. What he was doing in the first month is he was bumping that guy off and going over the top. Now, what we saw last night, and what I think we saw against Penrith as well, is he was more back to that impact he was having, where he was bumping a guy off and his momentum was stopping. And we need that front row we had in the first month of the season. If that front rower shows up every week, he's a state of origin quality player. If the front row we saw at the end of last year and the front row we've seen over the last couple of weeks shows up, then he's a good front rower. He's not an elite front rower. He's not a state of origin level front rower. And what needs to be determined now is whether he can turn that month of football that he showed at the start of the year into something that he's doing week in, week out. Whether he has the motor and the energy to turn up and play that way every week. Now, I'm reluctant to sit here and get comparing to Payne Haas at this point in their career. Haas is a generational prop. He is the elite prop in the competition, and he's probably the elite prop of this period of time. And he plays that prop row forward role probably in a way that not many people have before him. He's a guy that hits the line hard. He has speed. He can go through the line. He can pass. He's got footwork. This is a type of prop we probably haven't seen much of before. Now, that's what Steph has to be aiming for. But what we need from him more than being a Payne Haas right now is we need that high-impact prop we saw for the first month of the competition. And we need that guy showing up every week, because we haven't seen it the last 2 weeks, and I think it's hurt us the last 2 weeks.
Eddie, it seems with Stefano that he needs to have sort of a fire lit underneath him. Like those games that Gary's referencing, where he was fired up and he was very much getting towards that front rower that we've been wanting. But the last couple of weeks, he just seems to get his head down and just seems to lose his confidence, or he goes out of the game. I don't know what it is with him, but he just doesn't seem to be able to consistently have that fire in his belly.
No, he could be right. It's a very, very tough position for he's still a young player. I know it's his fourth season, but yeah, it's that's the thing. There's a couple of our guys at the moment who are good young players, but it frustrates me sometimes. And I know they're not, it's always going to be easier for guys like Steph if they're in a Brisbane or a Penrith or a Melbourne system, but they're not. And I just don't want these guys to get into a comfort zone where they're happy just being one of the better players in a weak side and not actually developing as they should. And I think that's a mindset thing. That's something he's going to have to work on whether it's a mental thing or a physical thing getting up for each game. But certainly we can't afford, for what we want to pay him and where we think he can go as a player, can't afford to have 60-metre games in the front row. Like, say what you like about Clemmer, but a bad game for Clemmer, he's still punching out 110, 120 metres. And I know some of those runs aren't as impactful, but the work rate and the intent and the mindset is there every game with David Clemmer. So it's early days in his career, but it's definitely been, I'd say, a poor 3 weeks in a row. I think the 2 weeks previous he was just under 100 metres against St George and Penrith, and then only 60 last night. So that's not going to cut it if you're looking to play at the next level.
For me, the difference between an elite player and someone who's a really good footballer, those really good footballers, they can play at a really high level for a month, maybe 6 weeks, and then either mentally or their body gets tired or physically tired, and they fall back to kind of that standard level that they've had. Now, we've got a couple of players at the moment who I'll put in really good players category. And I think Steph showed over that first month of the season, he can play at a really high level. But he's at that position now, whereas if he's going to be a great player, if he's going to be an elite player, he needs to be playing at that level week in, week out. And that low-level game becomes the outlier, and your normal is at high level. At the moment, the outlier is him playing that great football, at that elite football, and the normal is the level we've seen over the past 12 months. So he's got to find out whether he has it in him. The club needs to find out whether he has it in him, especially before we sign him to that next contract, that he has the ability to turn that good month of football into that being his normal standard level. And anything below that is an off game. At the moment, we've kind of got the opposite of that, and that's what needs to be worked out really soon.
Father Time catches up to all of us in the end, Eddie, which leads me into some discussion about John Bateman. I'm sorry, I don't think this is going to come back and haunt me, but I think we need to fire up the shredder for John Bateman. I think the game has passed him by.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily an age thing. I think it's just a body shape thing again. He's the same body shape he was when he was 24, 25 at Canberra. Obviously, he's probably closer to 30 now, but plenty. I feel for him because it's not like he's come here and bludged, I don't think, on the field. I thought there's plenty of effort from him last night, but he gets monstered in some tackles. And like Gary said, there were times there where I was sort of like him at lock, but then there were other times where I just was getting frustrated out of my mind because – it looked like he's trying to play that Isaiah Yeo or Paddy Carrigan role or whatever, but he's just not capable of it. And I thought it was a good effort for him last night to play 80 minutes against the Broncos in the middle in that lock role. But I think he might have actually gone to the edge in the second half. I don't know how long he played at lock, but I'd probably have maybe one or two guys ahead of him in terms of the shredder, Joel, if we were going to offload some big contracts.
Okay.
But
you got to name names?
Well, his back row teammate, Ice Papali'i. I mean, where is he? Where is he? I mean, what did he get, 70 metres last night? Like 9 runs? Like, that's a guy who's...
And by the looks of it, got hooked.
Well, rightly so. I know Steve was he was in Steve's gun in the preseason. I was sort of a bit, just give him and see. I thought he was okay last year. Maybe he'll get better with better halves around him. But eventually got to run out of excuses for some of these guys. I just... think he's in a comfort zone at the moment where he's sort of accepted that he's in a poor side and he's just getting his money. That might sound harsh. Easy for me to say. I've never played a game rugby league or in the NRL, but he's certainly more ineffective as a player than John Bateman, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's okay. That's fair enough. And I did struggle. He had a haircut, so I was struggling to sort of notice him out there. And so I think
he looks small, Joel. Again,
does.
We shouldn't harp on the body shape size, but I mean, I guess he was small at Parramatta, but it's just watching him warm up. I was with a few guys who support the Broncos, and they were like, "Who's that guy?" And they were like, "Oh, is that Papali'i? Geez, he looks small."
Yeah.
Anyway.
Maybe we overpaid a little bit, paid a little bit for a golden patch of form, and the efficiency and effectiveness of what Moses was doing, playing next to him at the Eels, body shape, Gary. Everybody who is a West Tigers fan, well, at least us old ones, we remember Gareth Ellis. And you think about the way that he played and that upper body strength that he had, and compare that with Bateman. That Gareth today is what you want, and Bateman, who was effective in a very physical Canberra pack, I don't know. I just don't see it. I don't see what he is adding to our team. And he's got a lot of attitude, and that's fantastic. But you've got to be able to back it up and lead the team, and I just don't think he can anymore.
Well, and that attitude isn't always coming out in the best ways either. There's been a number of times this season where his emotions have got the better of him, and he's been always stealing penalties, or he's got involved in stuff that he shouldn't have. Talking about body shape, though, that's why I'm keen on Sam Fainu playing out on that edge. I think that extra size makes him a much more tougher prospect out there, and it also makes him a much better target to use to hold up the defensive line. I know I harp on about holding up the defensive line, but it's crucial. And I think if we get him running some good lines, he's going to stop that defence from sliding, even when he doesn't get the ball. And that's the key for me with the size. You have to have second rowers who are a threat to bust through the line, to be able to hold up the defence, to create room for the outside backs. And I don't think Bateman or Papali, either of them are doing that at the moment. And I think as time goes on, Sam Fainu is going to start doing that on one edge. But we do probably need someone on the other side as well who can hold up those defences and who has the potential to go through themselves as well.
Let's have a look out in the back line. I thought Alamalo on debut, who has got a fair bit of super...
That's how you pronounce it, Joel.
...rugby experience. I thought he was pretty good. He's tall. Had one bad miss in defence, I think early in the second half, but otherwise I was pretty impressed. Eddie wants to have a little talk about the fullback. I've got here in my notes in regards to Buller, slow returns. It always leads to a slow play the ball, then the opposition can set their defensive line up. He made a couple of errors. He made that early one after 2 minutes. Sometimes fullbacks drop balls. That happens sometimes. And he did set up and gave a nice pass to Staines for that the first try. But overall, again, I'm disappointed in his game, Eddie, and I know you are.
No, I think he's played 25 games now. So I think we're at a point where, okay, I think it's fair where 50 games is probably, you say you're an experienced first grader. So he's not there yet, but he's played a full season. And I'd argue in totality, his best games were his first 6 or 7. I thought he fell away the back end of last year. And outside of the Cronulla game this year, I don't think he's been good. It might be harsh because, again, the thing with Steph, he's playing with inferior players around him. So obviously he's going to look better if he's in a stronger side. But you know what? He's not. He's in our side and we need him to be better. I watched a game today between the Titans and the Knights. Trey Fuller was fullback. Sorry, the Dolphins and the Knights. Trey Fuller was fullback for the Dolphins, and some bloke I've never heard of on debut for the Knights, Dave Armstrong, 23-year-old. They were about the 2 best players in the field, and it was the way they attacked the game. I don't see the urgency with Jureen Buller at the moment. I know he's got a bit of that languid style, but I think it's just crept into his mindset and his game because there's no pressure on his position here, which is a problem. So I'm happy we've got to River. And the kick returns have been non-existent all year. Even a couple of errors creeping into his game last night where I thought, it was miscommunication with the winger on a couple of occasions. But, I look at some of these stats, and Trey Fuller today, he's a backup fullback for a Queensland Cup player, 240 metres, 28 runs, 3 line breaks, 1 try assist, 10 tackle breaks in 1 game. Jureen Buller's got 20 tackle breaks in 7 games. Dave Armstrong on debut for the Knights, 1 try, 2 line breaks, 11 tackle breaks in 1 game. They ran the ball hard, those 2 guys, and that they'd be ranked 15th and 16th in terms of best fullbacks in the comp, those guys. So I'm not even talking about the top-level guys. But I think he needs a bit of a rocket up him at the moment. Gary might think that's unfair, but I just think he's a good young player, but I worry he's getting into that West Tigers, Luke Brooks sort of territory where they're just comfortable being in a poor side, going okay, but not progressing to the level you think when you watch their first 10 games of their career.
Yeah, I had a few issues again with his game last night. I have to agree with Joel. His kick returns this season have been terrible. Most of the time, he's looking to pass off to one of the wingers to take the ball up for him. We need him catching the ball, and I'm not overly concerned about him dominating the collision. He needs to get the ball up the field much quicker than he is. Now, the biggest problem wasn't the drop ball that I had last night. I think it was the Broncos' first try off the kick, where he didn't attack that ball at all. He kind of jogged back, and they came through and scored that try. And he needs to be better in those situations. One of the big raps we had on him last year was his defensive efforts, his commitment to saving tries. Now, there was an opportunity for him to really attack a ball, and he got beat to the ball by the Brisbane player, and Brisbane scored. That's an issue for me, a massive issue, because it's actually more about effort than not knowing what to do, which I think is still a little bit of a thing with Jahream Buller. He's a guy who didn't play. He left rugby league for a couple of years and went and played basketball. And I still think there's a lot he's got to learn about the game. But things like that chasing that kick and attacking that kick last night, that is something I have an issue with. He still needs to straighten that attack. He's still not straightening that attack. The whole side's going on a 45-degree angle towards the sideline most of the time. But he has an opportunity to straighten that. And the only time he straightens that is when there's a hole for him to run through. So he doesn't straighten the attack to hold up the defence. He'll only straighten it to go through a gap. And I think that's an area he's got to work on hugely. I'm probably not as harsh on him as Eddie, but I don't think he's the player at the moment that we need him to be. And yes, he has played 25 games, but he's in his second year, and there's a lot of players who find that second season a little bit tougher once other teams in the competition know what you're kind of doing. It's the good players that then struggle through that period where teams are reading up on you and learning about you a little bit more, and they develop ways to combat that. That's what he needs to show now, is that he's got more to his game than what he showed last year, because I think the teams are reading what he showed last year. So he's got to take his game to another level to counter that, and I don't think he's done that yet, and that's the concern, because that's something he needs to do fairly soon, because we need him to do it. It would be great if he was in a better side and he could get by going through this period of learning the game, because other players are carrying the weight for him. We need him to carry the weight for him, and yes, that's unfair, but that's the situation he's in, and that's the situation we're in.
That's just, Joel, like the attack. I think it was the 7th game last night, and the 5th game maybe we scored 2 tries or less. I think only one game we scored more than 3 tries. That was a game against Cronulla. And, yeah, he's in a key position in attack, not just running the ball back, but trying to set up your men out inside and outside. So I think it's got to be better. And I'm not saying to drop him or anything, but I really think at the moment he's not someone that I'm prepared to say like Lockie Galvin. Lockie Galvin hasn't gone through 25 games yet, but
yeah,
he's one of those players I can say, lock him down for the next 5 years as a fullback. I just think he's got to show a little bit more.
I think typically players, even the best players that have been dropped, haven't necessarily been dropped because their form is bad. Like you don't lose your skills, but I think it's the effort that we're talking about that concerns me. It's that lackadaisical sort of, oh, well, here comes the ball and the defensive line's coming, so I'll just submit in the tackle and get wrestled on the ground a bit. Like, it's actually running it back with some purpose. That's what I'm worried about, is there seems to be that lack of desire there. Yeah.
No, I agree. That's more, I think, the things that Gary's talking about in terms of straightening the attack and little things around learning the game, I'm prepared to give him some time with. But in terms of urgency and intent, that's got to be a mentality every week. And I think he's dropped off.
And it was one of his strengths last year. That was one of his strengths when he first came into grade last year.
The thing is that you need to get your sets off and get that momentum going. From 9 times out of 10, you get the ball back because they kick the field. That the way the modern game is, the ball gets reefed down the field. The fullback's the first player to get the ball, and if that player returns it with gusto, typically that sets you off on the right foot for the rest of the set. If you get manhandled and squashed in defence and you're stuck down there on the 30-metre line, the chances are your set of 6 is going to be pretty poor, and we saw that time and time again. So it's definitely an area that needs a little bit of attention. Speaking of Benji's his post-match press conference, not his second half, his post-match press conference, he said that we had a lot of poor last play options. The attack was clunky. He said there was too much making it on the spot, so they're diverting away from the game plan. Tim Sheen's probably is laughing and saying, now you know how it feels, because that was certainly Benji's trick, wasn't it? But the thing is that those halves are starting to concern me a little bit. I don't know. Some people on the forum, West Tigers podcast forum, saying move Caesar to lock. I don't know about that myself. But I thought we looked a little sharper, albeit the game was done and dusted, when Latu Fainu was on the field. And I know that he was playing at hooker, and I know that he's not a hooker, but I like the energy that he brings. And it was very interesting before the game. I don't know if you guys have watched it on Fox, but when they had the in-camera in the dressing room shots, there was a lot of smiling and mucking around and joking around between Galvin and Fainu. So it looks like they've got a pretty good bond, and they're pretty well connected. Do you see the argument, Gary, of moving Caesar, maybe not to lock, maybe giving him a little bit of time in reserves and having a go with the 2 youngsters in the halves and seeing what we come up with? We're up against the Bulldogs this week, which theoretically might be the kind of game where you make a change like that.
Not at this point. It wouldn't be an option I'd really consider. I think we need Caesar getting us around the park. I do agree his kicking game was poor last night. There was a kick, must have been midway through the first half that he just put straight in 5 metres into the in-goal with no pressure at all on the full. Those sort of mistakes
that led to the sin bin. That led to the sin bin.
Yes.
Those sort of mistakes from an experienced half, we just can't have happening all the time. And so he needs to be better in that regard. I do think there'll be, he's a guy in his 30s. There's going to be times where he probably does need a break, and we are going to be looking at Fainu and Galvin. But who gets us around the park in that situation? I don't overly like putting 2 really young guys together like that. I think we did that with Brooks and Moses, and I think it damaged both of them with their development, especially with Brooks. I don't think he ever got over it. And I know it would only be for a little bit of time, but I'm not prepared to do that. I think I'd prefer those guys learning their game or someone like Aiden Caesar who's been there and done that.
It could be a time this year, Joel, where I'd agree with you with that idea. I don't think it's now, probably not in the next couple of months, but we're not going to be in finals contention, and we're not going to be in finals contention probably with 8 weeks to go. And if we want to find out a little bit more about Galvin, I think there'd be maybe an opportunity to put him into halfback in that last couple of months with Fainu at 5'8". And that way, when Luai comes, if Galvin comes off as a halfback, then it's perfect. You can maybe just slot Luai into 6 next year, but I think it's at the moment Caesar's done well enough, and it's way too early in the season to be casting him aside based on what he's done and what he provides. I think
you're very conservative, you two. Yes, Gary.
Especially over the next couple of weeks. The next couple of weeks, we do have more winnable games than we've had the last 2. And if we are going to do anything this season, I'm not talking about making the top 8, but if we really want to avoid being in the race for that wooden spoon the entire season, then the next couple of weeks are games we're going to have to win. And I don't think that's the time to be experimenting with 2 young halves.
I think we're going to, at some stage, see Galvin playing halfback and controlling the team, and I'm looking forward to that. I mean, I I like Caesar's defence. He's reliable there, but when you combine him with some of the other plotters and slowpokes that we've got in the team, I just don't know if he's providing the output that we had or hoped that he would.
He's been much better than I was expecting.
Yeah. Well, he's been a little disappointing the last couple of weeks, I thought. One more thing out of that game that I wanted to talk about. Look, Fanua Pole was good off the bench, I thought, but impact off the bench. When we're talking Twal and we're talking Seyfarth, and I know that we always talk about these two, but especially the two Alexes, the two Alex syndrome. But I think if you're going to go anywhere in the game, Eddie, in this modern game, you've got to have some thrust off the bench. And we're starting to get to the point where we're getting down in the numbers a little bit, and that bench just didn't provide that. We seemed to, once the two front rowers came off, we just sort of really slowed down and didn't get much impact.
An interesting one all year following the bench. It's either Benji's got no idea how to use the bench, or he's got no faith. And I think he's got no faith. I think he knows what he's doing. He's got no faith in those bench players. Some of them haven't got on all year. Seyfarth got 22 minutes. So, what do you want him to do? He got 22 minutes last night. Twal's more of a concern to me. He signed till the end of 2048 or whatever, 20 years. Seriously.
4-year contract.
It's thanks Lee and thanks whoever did that. 4 years for it. He is a plotter. I'm sorry, but he's just, and I know he gets raps for his defence, but I reckon he's lazy around the ruck. I reckon he gets caught out. I know he doesn't miss tackles, but some of the things that happen around the ruck when he's on defence.
I think there was a pretty bad miss for him last night at some point.
I think that Dolphins game as well was bad.
I can't quite put my finger on it, but I'm sure he missed a bad one last night.
But the thing is, Joel, who do you want on the bench? There's just no depth in the club. It's young kids we don't know much about. I'd like to see this other Fainu at some stage given a crack. I'm sure he will be. You're probably right. Twal or Seyfarth might have to make way. But then again, I'm not convinced playing Fainu as a hooker is the answer. I haven't seen anything from him at hooker. But Appy, no wonder he's got a sore back. He's been carrying the team for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Back must be broken. We've raised concerns all year about the way he's being used, and I think that's come to fruition. He's looking buggered 30 minutes into games. He's missing tackles as well. He's missing some crucial tackles. So I'd like to see the Simpkin or De Silva return to the bench.
Maybe he just said he had a sore back so he could get a rest.
Maybe.
Well, he deserved a rest, but I think it's Gary. I think it's ruining his. I know it's all effort, and we appreciate the effort and the quality of player he is, but he's also starting to make errors because of how tight he is.
No, and it's not just the risk of that he's not playing as good a football because week in, week out, we're just grinding him into the ground. It's the risk of the next 2 years that we're damaging at the moment. He's not a young guy anymore, and we should be playing him 60 to 65 minutes a game. I think you get your best out of him for the game, but you also preserve him long term. I'm worried he's going to get some injury, and I don't know how severe the injuries he got last night, but I'm worried that just through overwork and just putting too much on him, he's going to get an injury and miss half a season or heaven forbid, a career-ending injury because we've got some good young hookers coming through, but they're not ready yet. And we're obviously not really trusting them because they're not getting bench spots or they're not getting game time even when they get a bench spot. So I really think he needs a break every single game. And for it to be a rare occasion where he's playing 8 minutes. You have a look at Penrith. Penrith weren't even starting him in games. I know it's a completely different roster and I know they had a much, much better backup. But we've got to look after this guy because he is a guy who's putting in a huge amount of efforts, and I know there was talk the other week they tried to take him off and he said no. Well, he's going to be told to come off in that situation because we can't keep playing him the way we are because at no point last night, I thought he tried really hard and he played really well. But at no point last night did we see the Appy Coruscant we had at the start of the season. And the reason that is we're just grinding him into the ground.
Mm. And you would think at this stage with Jake Simpkin, who's been around for a while now, has got a bit of experience, he'd be more than okay for that role. And Talon De Silva, who massive raps, and he's not getting a look in anywhere near first grade. I think he's been on the extended bench a couple of times. Yes, Gary?
There was I can't remember where I saw it, but Talon was asked about not getting game time, and his reply to it, which I really did like, was, "I'm not playing well enough in reserve grade to deserve a shot." So I think his form is down a little bit at the moment. I haven't seen a lot of the reserve grade games, but I don't think he's playing at the level that would want him to be playing at to play first grade. But Jake Simpkin is sitting there, and we've even had him on the bench a couple of times and not used him.
Yeah. I think Sione Fainu was a reserve for the State Cup game, so he seems to have maybe fallen down the pecking order. One thing I will say about Benji, and I'm not going to criticise him, but something that I'm a little bit concerned about, Eddie, is that the coaches who have had a big influence on him, Tim Sheens and Wayne Bennett, more often than not have had quite good teams, and more often than not are coaches that pick and stick. And that works pretty good when you're running a team that's full of stars. But when I'm just concerned he may be a little bit stubborn in that regard and maybe a little bit too loyal at times or may not. And I know it's hard when you're starting out and maybe you're going to be, in fact, you'd be too impulsive and you make too many changes too quickly. But I worry that he might stick too long with some guys.
Wait and see. I've been impressed the way he's handled the team this year in terms of selections. Most times I've looked at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday and, well, yeah, I like that. I've agreed with that, or that's something we thought might happen. I think he's keeping players accountable in terms of that. Might not be major changes, but there's little changes each week, rewarding guys like Samuela Fainu with the back row spot. So I just think it's more where I worry is, like you mentioned, he's perhaps in that Wayne Bennett sort of mold. That's who his mentor really is. And that's where, you need some really good assistants around you. And I'm not saying we don't have one in John Morris, but where was Robbie Farah last night? Was he there? Was he on the bench? Okay. I was just, every time they pan to the coaching box, usually he's standing behind him.
I don't know where he was. I saw him pre-game. He was definitely out there. I don't know what his role was during the
He might have been on the bench. But I think that's something he's going to have to be ruthless with, potentially going forward, is that if we don't have the roster necessarily to match some of the teams, we need some of the coaching nous to, particularly with attack, because I know Robbie and Benji were great attacking players, but we haven't seen it as coaches. They can be the best attacking players in the world, but if you've got an average team, you've got to find a way to score 18 to 20 points a game. We're struggling to score 12 at the moment. So I know I was speculating, on one of my rants last night. I said, if Todd Payton misses the 8 next year, that's one of the first phone calls I'd be making if he gets sacked by the Cowboys, saying, come down and run our attack, Todd. And then in a few years, you might be able to, because he's not going to get a head coaching job at another club straight away. I know I'm just very, hypothesizing here, but I do worry about that lack of experience in the coaching staff in terms of just a bit of X's and O's stuff when you've got a roster that's below par.
For me, I think Benji's been great with his selections. I agree with pretty much the players he's dropped and the players he's brought in. I think he's timed them fairly well. I think the change on the wing last week was great. I think the change to bring Fainu in last week was great. Getting Sullivan out of the side a couple of weeks ago was the right choice as well. I think he's pulling the right reins in that regard. I do question his use of the bench, but Eddie's probably right. There's not a lot there to really rely on. But I think his man management and his inspiring of the players and his relationship with the players is great. I think he's doing a really great job there. I also think in the media, the way he speaks and his press conferences, I think he's nailing all those aspects of it. But the concern I think most of us had leading into the season was an inexperienced coach with a lot of inexperienced assistants. John Morris, yes, former NRL coach, and I think he's done a wonderful job with our defence. I still think our defence is much better than what it's been in past years. But outside of John Morris, there's not a guy there who even has a lot of time as an assistant coach. So I would have liked probably at least an assistant coach who's been doing in that sort of role for 10 plus years as well. Someone to really kind of help him in the areas that he's struggling with. I think John Morris is doing a great job of that. But I think we're lacking that one extra experienced coach when we're looking at a guy who he's, as an NRL coach, he's got 1 year experience as an assistant / head coach that he did last year. And now he's in the deep end running the whole show himself. And that one extra really experienced guy, be a really experienced assistant coach or a former head coach at the NRL level, I think would have been really important, and I still think is really important for him moving forward.
Well, you look at the Roosters, and the guy's name has slipped my mind, but Trent Robinson appointed him the former Gold Coast coach who got sacked, who had a lot of experience in first grade, and he's got him as an assistant. So there's a lot of experience.
Holbrook,
That's him.
Yeah. Benji did say in his press conference, we can't turn things around overnight. He says it doesn't happen overnight, and we absolutely agree with that. From where we are at, I think the thing that's evident to me is how poor our talent identification has been over the last 5 or 6 years that we're in this situation. And some of the guys that, and look, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole because we've spoken about it at length before, but some of the guys that just are not contributing or are not able to contribute to our first grade team in this 30 or 29 man roster that we've currently got is a concern. So there has to be a lot of churn and burn. What worries me further than that is the ongoing performance of that State Cup team, Gary.
And the issue with that is a lot of these guys who aren't able to contribute are young guys we're bringing in from our junior ranks, and we've got them on deals that automatically put them into the NRL top 30. Now, there's another 4 or 5 who go onto NRL top 30 contracts next year. So when Richo's talking about us maybe being done with recruitment for 2025, well, it's probably true when you have a look at the number of young guys we've got coming into that squad. And I really hope those decisions on the players that we've got coming into those top 30 spots were really good decisions, because we've already got too many guys in there. Like when you're talking about guys like Brendan Tooman and Matamua, who really hasn't contributed anything over the last couple of years, who's still a very young guy himself, and I still think has a fair bit of potential. I think he's been pretty good in the reserve grade games I've seen, but we're just not getting enough for them to justify those top 30 spots. And even Felipe, who I think is playing really good football in reserve grade as well, he's another guy who's on a top 30 spot who's probably on one a little bit too early. And I think we've kind of given up this period of our club on banking on these guys developing into high quality NRL players. And if they don't do that, then it puts us in a really bad spot.
Yeah. Look, and it might be a different story if you've got 18 quality first graders. You can burn a few spots with a few prospects, but that's not us, and it's what's hurting us. So that's something that they're going to have to work on. It leads me into, if we're finished with talking about the game, I think we've covered it pretty well over the course of an hour. So it's been a pretty extensive breakdown of that game. But it's funny, isn't it? It had all of the hallmarks of a West Tigers loss. First, it was at Campbelltown. Secondly, it was a special event. Thirdly, we were honouring a player that had passed away in the week before that. Like, it had all of the hallmarks for a West Tigers loss. If I'd been a betting man, I probably should have put a bet on the Broncos. But anyway. Also, this weekend, we've seen some very interesting journalism. And some very interesting things from the world of journalism. I'm talking about the Paul Kent thing, obviously. I'm not going to talk about that, but that's a very interesting thing. I thought the question, and maybe this is another sign of the quality of the journalism in rugby league at the moment, the question that was asked of Benji, which I thought was just straight out of the imbecile basket, was, another loss at Campbelltown. Is it time to move all the games to Leichhardt? What a stupid question. I can't believe that somebody's being paid to be an NRL journalist and come up with that question. And thirdly, Phil Rothfield and his ridiculous shot at Shane Richardson once again, with his agenda against Shane Richardson and the audit, and saying that, Shane Richardson somehow stuffed up because he was honest about the membership numbers. Like, just some of this stuff has me completely scratching my head. Anyway, the 4-year deal for Shane Richardson, Campbelltown, home grounds, it's all going to be decided within the next month. Gary, we have spoken a lot about making sure that the review findings were put into place. One thing we were concerned about was that Shane Richardson wasn't going to get the environment that he wanted to work in, to hopefully weave his magic. It is a big, big relief for me that he signed that 4-year contract. it means stability, it means the opportunity to really put this plan into place.
Yep, I think, and he's the perfect person to do it. He has that history of turning clubs around. My big concern was, and you're right, it relieves a lot of the concern for me as well, is with the changes that the Holman Barnes group underwent with their board about a month ago, that would impact on the recommendations from the review. Now, if those recommendations from the review weren't going to go through, I don't think there's any chance that Shane Richardson signs. He's a guy who wants control at the club. He's not someone who is going to put up with board members or people who run a leagues club interfering in what he's trying to do with their club. If there was any sign of that, he would have been out the door. So the fact that he signed a 4-year contract, I'm really confident that any shenanigans that could have possibly went on behind the scenes with the recommendations of the review aren't going to happen. And the other thing I'm really pleased about is he's just a guy that makes decisions. Like even when the former administration was making a decision about going back to Leichhardt and Campbelltown, it took 12 months to make that kind of decision. This is something that's going to be over and done with in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of disappointed people no matter what the decision is made. I'll put my hand up and there's possibility that I'll be disappointed in the decision. But I'm really glad we've got someone who has the guts to make the call. And it's going to be a call that he views for the future of the club, the best possible outcome for the club. And that for me is huge. And that's why, even though I don't think I'll agree with every decision that Shane Richardson makes, that's why I'm really glad he's in that role, because he's going to make those tough decisions.
In May, there'll be a decision about the home grounds, Eddie, and I see this as being a big storm that he's going to have to weather. He's done it before. He did it at South, a little bit different here with a different club, different sort of history. And we're talking about traditional home grounds, at least Leichhardt, maybe Campbelltown to a degree. West's not out there for all of their history. So I see that as being a storm that he's going to have to weather. But he did say in that ABC interview, and Shane does sometimes let the cat out of the bag a little bit. He says he was asked if CommBank Stadium is Parramatta Stadium, and he said, well, you know, it's not next year. It's going to not just be Parramatta Stadium, but it'll be Penrith Stadium, and it'll be the Tigers Stadium. So it looks like it's going to be CommBank. Do you agree with that? And do you see? I mean, this is going to be a big test. I think this is going to really agitate a lot of people in the West Tigers fan base.
I don't know if it will agitate. I mean, it will agitate people if you go and read various forums or so, but I think the diehard fans that want success, all they want is for this club to be successful and win. And I'm going to defer to this man, Shane Richardson. I would rather us lose to the Broncos last night and have that news that we had on Friday that he's re-signed for 4 years. And if you told me Shane Richardson's leaving and we beat the Broncos, I'd be like, oh, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
I don't care where we play next year. I think you're right. I think it's going to be CommBank and it's going to be 3 or 4 games at Campbelltown. Maybe Leichhardt will get 1 game. I don't know. But the previous, admin, it just all seemed a bit of a ruse, like everything. Like the membership numbers were a ruse. The home grounds thing, like you said, they're trying to appease everyone. The what else was there? Even the junior contracts, like giving these Matamuas and Tumas and Melodies contracts, that was all just probably to buy themselves time and make themselves look good. Whereas what I like with Shane Richardson is there's no bullshit. It's just he says it how it is. He won't see it as a storm he has to go through. If he has to put up with a couple of those fleas on NRL 360, Joel. NRL 360.
I see what you did there, Eddie.
Tomorrow, they're going to be interviewing that tree that ended Paul Kent's career. Every time I'm depressed for the rest of the year, I'm just going to watch Paul Kent going headfirst into a tree. Sorry about that, but I just thought I'd get that off my chest.
If you're going to be a moral guardian, you've got to make sure that you watch your P's and Q's all of the time, Gary. I think, speaking of moral guardians, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, Shane Richardson's a great guy. But yeah, even like Eddie spoke about the financials and how the club was, like we made a decision and to go back to Leichhardt and Campbelltown And the previous administration, when we made that decision, they said because we're put the club in a financial position to be able to do that. We're not relying on big stadium money. And a lot of the news that's come out over the weekend, and a graph in some articles, we're down the bottom of the corporate, we're down the bottom of the sponsorship, we're down the bottom of the membership. How could we have been in a financial position to make a decision to go to grounds where that's going to cost us money?
Yeah.
And that just sums up what was happening in the past 2 weeks.
And the narrative that we were fed for a long time was that we are doing well off the field with corporate and we're making money and we've got money to put into the football and blah, 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 blah. And it was all smoke and mirrors, which shouldn't be forgotten. That audit story is an interesting one. We'll see how that develops. The funny thing is,
there was a really good piece of information in there for me though.
Yeah.
Was the Brighton sponsorship.
Yes.
Information that's they're likely to walk away from the sponsorship of the club. Anyone disappointed?
No, not at all. And the contract is up, so that's just a commercial decision. What I think you'll find with a guy like Shane Richardson is that Shane Richardson will have his people elsewhere. He'll have deals lined up, I'm sure. I'm sure that you will not see a blank West Tigers jersey in 2025 without a major sponsor. So, yeah, I'm confident in that. The Broncos' loss was difficult because up until that point, I was having a pretty good time. Parramatta lost, Souths lost. We re-signed Richardson for 4 years. We'd signed Taruva for 3 years. I'm thinking this is pretty good. Things are starting to go our way. It would have been lovely to get that win against the Broncos, but it wasn't to be. All right, Eddie, what's coming up on the midweek Eddie Otto pod? And you're going to get Yachty's quiz right this time because you've got a little bit in trouble.
Let's not. Speaking of letting the cat out of the bag, Joel, there's going to be a public apology on Wednesday.
Good.
I'm going to be apologising. I'm not going to say who it is to.
Is it to me? It should be to me.
Might be to you, Gary. But yeah, just on Campbelltown, Joel. I mean, that was the funny thing was there were a lot of Broncos fans there last night, but I don't think we should be discouraged by that because the appetite for football is there. Like we've sold out our last 2 games there.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Richardson will be bullish with. He'll go, well, okay, some of these guys are supporting Canberra and Brisbane and who knows, PNG, if we bring them in, they're supporting them, whoever. But there's appetite for football there. And I know it grinded me when Adam Reynolds was getting a standing ovation, but I'm like, you know what? We haven't earned the right to own this place. We haven't done enough there. We've played bad football there. I thought Benji batted away the question really well. And I think that, just getting rid of the ground because we play poorly there is just poor thinking.
But there's also always been the complaint that we only play interstate teams there and they don't bring supporters. Well, they did last night, so there must be some attraction at that ground. And I know the Brisbane Broncos were playing there and they're a really quality team, but there was a lot of opposition supporters there who made the trip last night.
But you've also got to very much make the point to congratulate the people of the MacArthur. I think they've really responded to the call to get behind the team. If you want the team, they've done that in spades, which is really, really good. We just all have to, I think, be a little bit patient. There are definitely some concerns with the squad and some concerns with the players, and that's not going to happen overnight. A lot of the other stuff you can do relatively quickly, but the playing group stuff, when you're confined by salary caps and contracts and things like that, we're just going to have to be a little more patient. All right, guys, thank you very much, and I'll listen in intently for the midweek one, Eddie.
Looking forward to it, Joel.
I'm looking forward to my apology, Eddie. Can't wait.